Okay, welcome everybody. My voice loud enough?
Yes. Just be loud. You're louder.
Okay. Behind me, can you hear me? Okay. Excellent. Welcome everybody to our International Women's Day event, Lessons on Resilience. If this is your first time of coming to our event, show of hands. Oh, nice. Welcome. And if you've been to our event before, show of hands too. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so just housekeeping for those of us that are new. At the female productive community. I hope I'm still on.
Sit on the bench seats at the front.
It's the first time we're live streaming, so just
Thumbs up emoji.
check. We are the female productive community, and our vision is inclusive product leadership. We want to empower women and every underrepresented voice, regardless of your ethnicity, your background, or whatever your personal circumstances is. We want you to feel empowered and thrive in inclusive team. And that's why we have this community run by this amazing crew of volunteers. We're all run by a team of volunteers. We are over 750 members globally. And we have 4 teams of events this year. We have Power, Belonging, Voice, and Inclusive Innovation. And we have a few events upcoming. Every year we welcome volunteers who want to give back their time, resources, or whether in our content team, events team. So if you would like to, join and volunteer your time with us, we have monthly onboarding called last Thursday of every month. So on the 26th of March, we have one. So if you scan that QR code there, you get access to our Luma link, Luma event page where you get all of our upcoming events and just subscribe. And also, we have YouTube, Instagram, TikTok accounts, just at the Female Product page. Follow us, subscribe, like, share, and engage with our content. I will now hand over to our sponsor for the evening, the Difference Engine, Michelle Palmer.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Hi. So welcome, and thank you for joining us tonight in celebration of International Women's Week. It's a real privilege to be co-sponsoring this event. So thanks very much for the opportunity and to be in a room with such important people as yourselves in product. And I'll tell you why in a moment. I spend my days helping folks find their next career move. And I speak to technologists and I speak to fine, good product people like yourself. And I'm continually reminded just how powerful the product function is. And I would say more so now than ever, particularly with the advance of AI. We're seeing with technology advances and the goalposts are moving rapidly and almost daily, that complexities around technology are dissolving and they're abstracting. So it would take many, many months to develop something with code where now we can use AI, leverage that to get very, very rapid advances. But what I am seeing is that there's one role, one function that at the moment appears to be immune to this level of change, and that's product. And I believe that as product leaders and as aspiring product leaders, it's because you guys have the ability to make the decision about what needs to be built, why that matters, and how that's created. And I don't see technology replacing that function anytime soon. So I say that the product function is critical now, more so than it ever has been, and that you're a pure intersection, you're a true intersection between business, between technology, and between what matters most to humans. So you should not feel overlooked in the work that you do. I've had the privilege of working with some really very capable CPOs and CTPOs, and I've helped those founders, I've helped those products folks augment their teams nationally and also internationally. And I've also helped those senior leaders move on and find new roles once they've accomplished their mission of transformation in a business. And what strikes me about those leaders that I speak to, and what strikes me about those product specialists that are looking for new moves, the really sharp ones are very, very resilient. So it's really fitting that we have Sue Stockdale here to talk to us as a polar explorer about the importance of resilience in leadership. And Sue will share some really interesting stories about what it's like to be in the wilds in a truly inhospitable environment and make really key important decisions around preparation, around preserving mental strength, around operating well within a team to ensure success. I'm personally really delighted that she can join us here tonight and to share her story. She's an amazing leader. I've learned a lot from her in the many years that I've known her. I'm sure you'll all I'm sure you'll all join me in welcoming Sue to speak to us tonight about her experiences. So welcome, Sue.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. How are we doing? Good. Yeah? Fantastic. And good evening, those who are online watching and listening as well. I hope that you will enjoy the experience just as much as those that are in the room here live this evening too. And I see a few familiar faces, which is lovely to see this evening. We're going to have some slides, but there's also going to be quite a bit of interaction. So if you thought you were just going to sit there for the next 45 minutes and enjoy listening, not so. Because if we're thinking about resilience and we're thinking about stepping into the unknown, what better opportunity to practice it than right here this evening? Some of the skills that I'll be sharing with you tonight. Now, I will be taking you on a journey that involved 4 people from 3 different countries. As you can see here, 2 men and 2 women. And we were skiing across the Greenland ice cap. Now, that's a distance of around 350 miles, 540 kilometers. But whilst I'm going to be taking you on this journey, I'm really using it as a metaphor for our journey in our career, in our life, in finding a new role, whatever journey springs to your mind. So as I'm talking about things in my familiar environment, I'd like you to reflect on your environment and think about how these lessons translate. So that's going to be our agenda for this evening. Now, to give you a sense of what it's like, and I don't think we've managed to get the sound to work, but there's a little video clip here, and at least you can have a view. If I get my mouse to work here. This is what skiing across the Greenland ice cap is like. Now, if there was sound, you would hear a relentless noise of the wind blowing in your face. Now, what you would also notice here is you're on your own. It's too cold to speak to anybody else. You're traveling in single file. So what's going on in your head is critical to your performance. Does that relate to your jobs? Yeah? Because these days, of course, many of us are working remotely. Maybe we're doing something equivalent. We're in our own space, and what's in our own mind influences how we behave. So I hope already you're getting a sense about how the Arctic environment and the constant uncertainty, change, any of us explorers in that environment, we're not in control. Mother Nature is the one who will really help decide whether we're going to be successful or not. We have to adapt to what we find around us. And that's to give you a sense of the environment. Oops, my video's there. Now, one of the themes that's going to travel through my presentation this evening is what I call the explorer's mindset. So if you do have a camera there, you want to take a screenshot, please, this is the opportunity to do so, because we will be referring to this as we go through this evening. 5 conditions, if you like, 5 ways of being, ways of thinking that can help any of us when we're exploring the unknown. Be that the job market, be that in your career, be that in a conversation with somebody in your organization that you might find difficult or uncomfortable. That can feel like the unknown as well. So these 5 qualities, these factors, first of all, curiosity, the ability to seek out new ideas and perspectives. And if you think about it, our brain is wired to keep us safe. That's its job. So when we're going into anything that's unfamiliar and new, it requires effort. So it's always worth bearing that in mind, that unfamiliar, new will be uncertain. It will be difficult, but we need effort to do that. And when we're doing that, therefore, it's safer to be familiar, isn't it? To stick to habits, to do things that we do regularly, because we don't have to then change. I think that's really important to be curious and being perhaps sometimes asking the question, just, oh, what made you say that? What caused you to think that? And I'll explain in a minute what made me curious enough to join this expedition team. The next quality is about confidence and self-belief. How much do you trust in your own ability to succeed in whatever activity that you're undertaking? And I see it very often these days. I work with leaders all around the world, very often at very senior levels. And I would say that sometimes there's a perception that they portray outwards that they have confidence and self-belief, but inside they don't really trust themselves. Out there in the Arctic, you've got to trust yourself. You've got to know that if everything else fails, you can survive. And so I think it's always a factor that's very useful for us to be reminded of for ourselves. Do you trust yourself? Then the third one, tolerance of risk and uncertainty. So what feels risky to you? Eating a yogurt after its use-by date? For some people, that might feel risky. For others, it might be cycling on their bicycle whilst wearing headphones. That might feel risky. There's no common definition of risk, but we will all have a different tolerance to that. So we'll talk about that this evening as well. It's all very well talking about going into the unknown, but we actually have to do something. So action orientation. Not just thinking about it, but doing something, because that's the way we learn. When we take that step into the unknown, we will get some information, some data that will help us then to tweak, change, or adapt for the next time. And then finally, when you've done all of these things, there will always be things that go wrong. So how do we bounce back quickly? And whilst this evening's event has been built about resilience, this isn't the only area here that I'm going to be talking about, because all these other ones help us to be resilient. Am I making sense about that already? Yeah. So we're not just thinking about purely this ability to bounce back and recover from setbacks. We're looking at the whole areas. So that's going to be our agenda. And I always think I would love that when you leave this evening, that you've got an intention in your mind. You've got an action that you want to take, or that you want to think about and then take. And that's why you may have seen some of you, if you haven't got one, you can get one here later. I've handed out a postcard here. I call this a commitment card. I'll come back to that later. But the idea of this card is that you write your action down here for yourself. So you're making that commitment to do something to help yourself to be more resilient. But in order to get there, where's your area of focus? What are the areas perhaps that are your strengths already, and maybe there are some areas for you to develop? So I'd like you initially to take a moment or two just to reflect on these 5 areas that we looked at a minute ago: curiosity, confidence, uncertainty and risk, action and resilience. I'd like to turn to the person next to you, introduce yourself if you haven't already done so, and then just share with them what if you were taking like one area of focus this evening out of these 5, what would that one be just for you to be considering? So you can talk about many other things as well, I'm sure. A couple of minutes just to introduce yourself, give yourself a sense of the area you want to focus on. Can I get your attention again, please? You will have more opportunity to chat to those people sitting next to you later. So I hope that kicked off your conversation. But for now, I'm curious now, just to get a sense of where the area of focuses are with everybody in the room. So perhaps by a show of hands, who's kind of focused on curiosity? Anybody got their hands out? Okay, a few of you. Confidence? Okay, so you can be seeing around the room here who's putting the hand up for what? Uncertainty. Okay. Action. Okay, and resilience. Okay, so it's kind of a broad spread across them all. So thank you for that. And I just invite you to then keep that focus as we go through the presentation, because by the time we come to the end, maybe you'll get some insight into then how you can progress that a little bit further forward for yourself. Does that make sense? Lovely. Okay, so on to curiosity. Well, there I was sitting in my house back in 1999. It does sound like a long time ago now. When this contact of mine, Till, a German, contacted me and said, I'm putting together an expedition, Sue. We'd love you to have you as the fourth member of the team. I'm going to have a couple of Norwegians join, and we'd have you as the fourth person. Now, why was I curious? I was curious because I'd never skied across the Greenland ice cap before. I'd done many other polar expeditions prior to this one, but it seemed like a great opportunity to have an adventure. Now, when I said yes, there was partly because I'm one of those people that does say yes and then think, oh, maybe that wasn't such a good idea. So I will jump sometimes too quickly. But then I was going to have to trust these people with my life. Because if you think about the Arctic, that is what it is like. So why would I trust them? I had to understand why they wanted to be there, what was their purpose, and also what strengths they were bringing to the team. And I think this is also relevant in the business world as well. Do we understand why people are doing what they're doing and what their strengths are? So Till, our German photographer, he's one of these people that travels around the world to adventurous and remote locations and wants to get fantastic photographs. So you know those pictures you see in those outdoor clothing shops on the wall, or maybe in your adventure travel magazines, profiling an amazing place in the world. He's one of the people that does those photographs. Now, what does that mean for the rest of us in the team? We're probably going to be the ones that are the subjects of those photographs. And if you've ever seen a picture from the Arctic, people don't look like they're just smiling and having a nice time, do they? They normally are in some dramatic environment. So I had to accept, if I was joining this team, I'd probably be standing around for a while, because if there's any photographers here, photographers don't just take one photograph, do they? They always want to get the perfect shot. So patience to accept that he would get hopefully some great photographs and that we would be the subjects in the pictures. But that was his intention. That was his why, to get great pictures and have an adventure. And he'd asked a friend of his, a Norwegian, Jana, and she'd said yes. Now, Jana had done lots of expeditions, cross-country skiing, but she'd never been out for a month on an expedition before. So this was new territory for her. That was her purpose. She also had some great strengths. She was a physiotherapist, and she was living and working in Greenland at the time of the expedition. So local knowledge, she could speak a bit of the language. That was a great person to have on the ground who can help us get ourselves organized prior to the expedition. And she had asked another friend of hers, another Norwegian, Terje, to join us. Now, he is somebody I would call a Mr. Fix-It. Now, whether it's a male or a female or a person that can have practical skills, I'm always in great admiration of somebody who can do that. And again, maybe there's some of you here this evening. If something breaks down, Terje could fix it. And that's not one of my skill sets. So out there in the Arctic, it's a perfect environment where you want somebody that's resourceful like that. And he had a wife and 2 children back in Norway. Now, given he didn't want to spend too much time away from his family, he said to them, "Don't worry, darling, I'm really fit and strong. I think it will take us 22 to 25 days to do this expedition." Now, he hadn't told the rest of us that, and we were all thinking more like 30 to 35 days. So before we even started out, we've got varying expectations that haven't been voiced. Does that ever happen in the workplace? So one of my learnings from this, in an extreme environment, how do we make the effort to find out this piece of information as early as we can in a team? What people's strengths are, why they're there, and what their expectations are. I was the 4th member of the team. Now, as I mentioned, I'd done quite a number of expeditions before. I thought this would be a great case study in team working and performance. People who are strangers to one another, different countries, different cultures, coming together and having to perform at a high level in a very short space of time. So that meant I had my notebook and I was writing down, well, what are our strengths and our weaknesses? What are our hopes and our fears? How are we making decisions? That might annoy some other people, you can imagine. But that was my purpose. That was my why for being there. So with this mix, this diverse range of skills, but with one common purpose to go on our journey, we set off beginning our adventure. This was it. Starting off on the west coast of Greenland, finishing here on the east coast, but starting and finishing at sea level and skiing to a height of over 8,000 feet in the middle. So 2/3 uphill, 1/3 downhill, dragging our sledges. Now you probably say, if you're problem solvers, which I'm sure you all are, why didn't you just do it backwards, Sue? And do the 1/3 uphill and 2/3 downhill. So logistics made it easier for us to travel and start at the west coast. So that was our mission. Do you have milestones on your projects that you work towards that everybody's clear about? So that was the same for us here. Now, again, thinking about what motivates people in a team. Perhaps you've come across before thinking about the use of language. For some people, they prefer towards language, and for others, they prefer away from language. Is this familiar to any of you in the room? So some people are motivated by, we're going to get here to our end point, and we're going to perhaps go somewhere that nobody's been before, or we're going to experience some new things. So very much towards focused. Other people are motivated by getting away from the problems, the difficulties. We're going to be so organized that we reduce any opportunity for error. We're going to avoid difficulty. It's a little bit like saying for one person, they might want to lose weight, the other person might want to get fit. Do you see the sense of the difference? Now, in a team context, it's always worthwhile, I've found, to be starting to notice the type of language that people are using. Because if we're trying to say, let's go towards, and they're very much focused on reducing, getting rid of, avoiding, it doesn't motivate them in quite the same way. So when we need people to be resilient, are we speaking to them in the language that will motivate them and help them keep going? So on to confidence. Well, I had a reasonable amount of confidence that I could survive in the Arctic, having done it before. But I had never encountered a glacier to cross that. So this was the start point for our expedition. As a team, we'd only met one another 4 days face to face prior to starting out on our journey. So there was this whole process of how do we build this team very quickly. So you can imagine me. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And the team is trying to get itself organized, get all its equipment ready. So I'll just go back here again. And I've pressed the wrong thing here. Let's go back to here. So here we are, day one, enthusiasm high. We're preparing to get over this glacier. And then, as you saw in the next slide, we might even encounter no snow. So we've got changing conditions, just like you might have in your workplace, whether it's in your projects. Goodness knows we all have changing conditions these days, don't we, in terms of things happening that are outside of our control. So we had planned for that. We'd prepared. We had rucksacks as well as our sledges. And that meant we could put all our equipment in our rucksacks and we could carry it over this mountainous moorland because we'd been told that that was a safer way to get onto the ice cap rather than climbing up that glacier. So we found our way onto this area here. We're planning to cross this lake. Unseasonably warm temperatures have meant that the lake around the edge has melted. So we can't cross it now. So we have to make a detour, just like I'm sure all of you do in your workplace on a regular basis. Here we are, hour 6, day 1, having done that detour on that rough ground, the shaft on one of our sledges has broken. How motivated do you think we are now? All of that energy at the start has begun to dissipate when we realize that an early problem could cost us the entire expedition. We can't go back. We're too far away from our start point where we were dropped off, so we have to only go forwards. Thankfully, though, we have a problem solver. We have our Mr. Fix-It who manages to fix the sledge. So my confidence now is beginning to think, well, I'm confident perhaps in my own capabilities, but I'm not there on my own. I'm in a team. So how confident am I in the others around me? And seeing Terry come through and fixing the sledge certainly gave me a degree of confidence in him. Then we were planning to go into the area that's probably the most risky on any expedition. And this is where I hope I will highlight the idea of risk and uncertainty. And this is an area called the crevasse zone. So if you can see here these lumps on the image, it can look like fairly innocuous there, doesn't it? But if you cross there with your sledge underneath this snow and ice, it could give way and you could find yourself in a crevasse hundreds of meters deep and potentially plunge to your death. So unseen, but fairly drastic consequences. Do you have any crevasse zones in your organization? I'm sure we all do. And how do we then either inspire, lead other people through the crevasse zone, or how do we tackle it ourselves, depending on what that is? Well, we had a plan, just like you, I'm sure, would have a plan as well. And our plan was to be roped up together. So to be safe to travel through that area, you put a rope on your own harness and then your sledge, and then it goes on to the next person and so on. So then we're skiing along like a giant snake, all trying to ski at the same speed. If somebody falls in the crevasse, then the rest of you are acting like a counterbalance, and then you can, in theory, pull the person out. That sounds good, doesn't it? But I probably wouldn't want to just rely on that. Well, our German friend, Till, he had been through a crevassed area before. None of the rest of us had. So he said, oh, don't worry. I've got a procedure. It's written down here. This is what you have to do if you fall in the crevasse. It's on a little card. I've laminated it so you can keep it in your top pocket. And if you fall in the crevasse, what do? We get out the procedure. Exactly. Does that ever happen in our workplace? That we kind of overly rely on a procedure without necessarily even thinking about, is it the right procedure, or have we got a backup plan? So I'm not anti-procedure at all. Please don't take that away from what I'm saying. What I have learned is procedures have their place, and we also sometimes need to question or have a backup plan, which is what our team had. Our backup plan was don't rely on the card, shared a little bit of knowledge. So Till, our kind of nominal expedition leader, shared some knowledge as to what to do if we fell in the crevasse, and then we would all have that knowledge to be able to use. But what happened after about half an hour, where Till was in the front and the rest of us skiing along, Jana, the Norwegian, got bored. She said, I want to be in the front. I want to be, she was using her curiosity. I'd like to know how to navigate my way through here. So Till said, okay, then you go first, I'll go second, and the other two can go behind. And for about the next 10 minutes, Jana was skiing along in the front, and she's trying to think about where to go, meanwhile getting commentary behind. Go left. No, go right. No, not that way. Over there. Until she stopped and threw her ski poles down in disgust and said, well, if you're so good, get back in the front. Have you ever been in a car with a backseat driver or a leader who says, yes, I'll empower you, and then just keeps coming to check on the details? I'm sure we've all been there. Well, thankfully, Till realized what he was doing. And he then said, okay, look, I know there are some risky areas here. If I see you heading towards what I think is risky, I'm going to shout stop, but then I will ask you a question. I will get you to think about what you're looking at, what you're noticing, how you're making decisions. In effect, he began to then coach her rather than tell her what to do. And that then increased her level of confidence. And the rest of us were learning as well. We were paying attention. So sometimes in those high-risk environments, we can get through them. It's all about how we're managing ourselves and how we're communicating with others. Speaking of risk, one tool that I use, and you may not be able to see this quite so clearly if you're listening in online, but hopefully you will get the sense of it. I use a tool that's devised by a company called PCL, called the Risk Type Compass. And this is a kind of an assessment tool. People do it and they get an individual report or they get a team report. And there's 8 different risk types. And what it's evaluating are 2 axes, emotion and cognition. Now, what do I mean by this? I'll take you on to explain that. Emotion, as is kind of obvious, is concerned with our feelings, our intuitive responses. To what degree does emotion play a role in how we respond to risky situations? So for some people, emotion will play a greater role, for others less so. Similarly, cognition is another neurological process, is how much do we need to know? Are you one of the people that likes to know a lot of information before you take a decision or action? Or are you somebody that's a bit more flexible and, you'd rather not know and be much more carefree? There is no right or wrong here, by the way. All risk types are valid. So I'm just going to go back here. If I got my clicker to work, it would be helpful. Here is the emotional spectrum, if you like, range. At one end, the descriptor is intense, the other end is composed. Can you get a sense of the difference there? How emotion plays it out? This cognition, the need to know, at one end it's prudent and the other end it's carefree. And then you've got a mix in between, which we will go on to look at here. 8 different risk types. Intense, that greater degree of emotion involved. Excitable, carefree, adventurous. Wary, prudent, deliberate, and composed. So less emotion impacting here with deliberate and composed, more emotion with intense and excitable. The need to know, cognition, more with wary and prudent, and less so with carefree and adventurous. So you can get a sense of these 8 risk types. Now, I've used this tool, for example, in a technology company, a team that were tasked with taking more risks. The company was growing at pace over in San Francisco, and this particular team didn't seem to be taking many risks. So you used the tool with everybody in the team, and we identified that whilst they were meant to be taking risks, nearly everybody in the team, apart from one person, were wary and prudent. So they wanted to have all the I's dotted and T's crossed before they took action. And there was one member of the team that was adventurous. And he had been kind of ignored in how the team had operated. When we used this tool, the whole team got suddenly this new awareness. We could learn something from this individual that's adventurous that would maybe help us to be more adventurous and less wary and prudent. And that understanding within the team helped them to change their behavior as a team. So I hope I've explained just at a very high level how something like this, an understanding about your own tolerance for risk-taking, can help you in terms of developing resilience and heading into the unknown. So here's my question for you to have a conversation again, maybe with the same person as before, or maybe somebody different. It's up to you. I'd like you to reflect on these different risk types and think about the one that maybe best identifies you, just the word that resonates with you. And then how does this influence the way that you handle uncertainty and make decisions? So I'm going to just take you back there. You can look at the different risk types. 5 minutes just in a conversation with somebody else in the room, and just think about your own risk type, what you think it might be, and then how does that play out in your everyday work. Okay, see what happens. started to reflect for yourself on perhaps the word that is drawing you towards it, maybe that you've got a better understanding, or perhaps an understanding of why a particular person that you engage with is so frustrating when they may be the opposite to what your preference is, what your tolerance and attitude towards risk-taking is. There is no downside, there's no bad risk type here. The research that PCL have done does show, however, in different industries, there is often a preponderance of risk types. So if you were going to pensions, financial services, somewhere where you'd probably want people to be quite careful about managing your money, yes, they are more wary and prudent. And somewhere like recruitment, for example, are more carefree and adventurous. Apart from Michelle. So it's not all everywhere, but there is a theme, a trend more often in different sectors. I wonder if you can guess which one I am. I am adventurous. Yes, that is the one that is for me. But this tool really helped me individually and within our team for us to understand what our approach to risk-taking was. And it came out really quite clearly in this next part of our journey. We were now free of that crevasse zone, free to ski at whatever speed we wanted, fully empowered to play to our strengths. Well, you remember the Norwegian thinking about his wife and 2 children. He is skiing as a very fit individual, effortlessly across the ice, wanting to get back home as quickly as possible. Then there is the other Norwegian, and she is very fit as well, so she's keeping up no problem. And then Till, the photographer, well, he realizes that 2 of his subjects are heading over the horizon, so he's trying to keep up with them. And then there is the Brit at the back, struggling to keep up. But yet, here I am as the most experienced person in this environment. So my first reaction was, how dare they go so fast? Don't they know that we can't go this speed? It's impossible. You know, on my experience, this isn't possible. Do we ever do that in the workplace when we think we know we have the most knowledge and we perhaps ignore or criticize people who've got something different to offer to us? Well, I went from that, how dare they go off? But I couldn't tell them to slow down. They were too far ahead. So then I went to poor me. I went into what I would call victim mode. It's just, I'm going to get thrown off this expedition. I'm so bad at what I'm doing. Well, what happens if I start to think like that? What happens to my speed of skiing? Does it get faster or slower? Slower, of course, because my mindset, I'm limiting my performance by how I am thinking. And then I even started to cry. But all that happened is my tears froze. It was so cold. And I couldn't see out my goggles. So, this victim thing isn't working either. I will just have to keep taking one step in front of the other. And rather than thinking about how I get through the next hour, maybe I'll just focus on the next 5 minutes. And if that was really tough, then even could I count to 60 and see what happens? So I learned here that in that kind of uncertainty, when I couldn't control anybody else, all I could control was how I was thinking for myself. Well, it was quite interesting that at the end of that day, with all of this varying speed of skiing, we get inside our tents. Nothing is said. Have you ever been in a situation like that in your workplace, where trouble is brewing as an issue, but nobody will talk about it? Perhaps you identify with that. Well, next day, what happens? We all get out our tents, begin skiing. Terry, the Norwegian at the front, he gets a muscle strain. What do you think I say? Yes. I think, brilliant, that's going to slow him down. That's the problem solved. But was that team thinking? Was that going to help us all? Of course not. So we had to find a different way to solve this problem. So we had to then sit down and say, well, what are we going to do about this? Now, you can imagine what happened. Everybody going, you're going too fast, you're going too slow. All of that emotion that builds up when we get into these difficult situations, all of that came out, first of all. And we just had to, or I had to, as everybody else did, let that happen. Because if we're being emotional, we can't get into our thinking brain and solve the problem. So how do we accept that, yes, that will happen, and then be able to think straight? And we came up then with lots of ideas, different ways of solving the problem. So what would you do in that context? Shout out any ideas you would have. How would you find a way to make sure you can all get across the ice, but at perhaps a more equitable way? Come on, you're all problem solvers. What ideas have you got?
Discuss with each other and understand their perspective.
Okay, yeah. So we're gonna talk together and think about other perspectives, and we might need to come up with some ideas. Do we just carry on as before, but accept that that's going to be the reality, or do we come up with different ways? What would you do?
I'd say advocate for yourself if you want to be leading the pack.
Yeah.
You say so.
Yeah. Okay. So straight your point of view. Advocate for yourself if that's what you want to do.
Take it in turns.
Okay, yeah, so you might want to just decide how to distribute up the speed. Does somebody go in the front for an hour and then it changes over or something like that? So any other ideas? Yeah.
Check in with each other more regularly.
Yeah. So if you say, well, okay, after however many minutes or hours, let's
Or
check in.
every day, just like a daily check.
Yeah, how are we doing? How are we doing? Are we on target? Are we happy with what's happening? What I'm hearing here is about communication. That's really all the ideas you come up with. Well, often people say, oh, put the slowest first. You ever heard that when you're out hiking or something? People often say, put the slowest person first. But what does that do for the high performer, the fit performer that wants to go faster? Yeah, it often demotivates them. So how do you find a way of solving it? Well, in the end, the way we solved it is Terry, the Norwegian, said, look, Sue, give me some of the weight from your sledge. With my muscle strain and a heavier sledge, that will slow me down. And with less weight in your sledge, you can ski faster. We'll find a way. But you know, I resisted that idea. No, I can do it. Do we ever do that at work? Until I sort of thought to myself, do you know what? What's not to like about a lighter sledge? And if I give up some of the weight in my sledge, I'm helping the entire team to succeed. Take away from my own personal needs and what's important for me and think about a kind of higher level, the needs of the team. And then I thought, that's quite good. I've got a lighter sledge. We can go at a better pace. And that for me was like probably the most critical moment of the entire expedition. But also it brought us together more closely because we had a really kind of meaningful conversation here where we all listened and heard one another. And I think these were the things that came out here. We managed to pause our panic. We regulated our emotions. We asked questions after we'd got through the you're too fast, you're too slow. Like, how can we do this differently? We asked for different observations, perspectives from each person. We didn't rush to fix the problem, so we stuck with it with lots of different ideas. And then together we were kind of modeling that learning mindset. But I think the number one thing here is how do we regulate our emotions, which is often the thing that gets in the way and stops us really listening and trying to find other ways to solve problems. So with a lighter sledge, we carried on. And of course, just like I'm sure all of you have KPIs or whatever you call them, project targets, we had measures of success for us as well. And this is using our GPS every day. We were measuring our distance. And typically we would ski 22 kilometers a day. But as we looked at our map, after 11 days, we realized if we carried on at that speed, we would run out of food before we got to the other side. So we're going to have to do something different. But yet we all felt we were operating at our limit already. Has that ever happened to you? You know, you think, how can I possibly do any more? I haven't got any more time, any more energy, any more resource. So we need to reframe our thinking. And rather than ski and think about 1 hour of skiing, a 5-minute break, another hour of skiing, another 5-minute break, which was our process normally for 8 hours a day, we said, let's change that. We're going to not think about time anymore. We're going to think about intervals. And we knew we could ski 8 intervals. They just, up until that point, had been 1 hour of duration. So now we made our intervals 1 hour and a quarter. So what did that do for the day? Now we're skiing for 10 hours. Do you get the sense of what I'm saying? It's like finding a way just to reframe what you're focusing on. You can solve the problem because we knew we could do 8 intervals. We just changed the length of the interval. And that opened up some fresh ideas for us about what was possible. It made a huge difference. To all of a sudden, at that 7th hour of the day, 7th interval, I'd be thinking, I'm exhausted. Oh no, I know I can do 8. And I just kept going. Now, we're here this evening, learning, sharing, chatting to other people, networking. You can do that out on the ice as well, would you believe? And after 13 days, here we saw some figures heading towards us. And this was another team. It was Norwegians. They had dogs rather than just sledges themselves. And they said, well, there's 2 things that had happened to them. They said, at this particular point that we were heading for, our sort of major milestone, Die 2, an old disused early warning station on the ice cap, they said there are people living there, scientists that are there, and we got some fresh bread from them. So we thought, brilliant, real food, not dehydrated. So sometimes you need a little reward to be looking forward to when you're on a big project. And secondly, they said, at that 8,000 feet highest point of the ice cap, the temperatures were so cold, we encountered a storm, 2 of our dogs died. So we thought, okay, now we've got some intelligence, we've got some information, an early signal about what could be ahead. Do we just ignore it or do we do something now? And what we did was we put an extra set of tent poles, which we'd had on our sledge. From then on, we doubled up, so made our tents stronger when we pitched them at night, just in case. And again, thinking about in the workplace, sometimes to be resilient is to be looking ahead and to be thinking, what if? And just being able to notice the signals that you're getting. An event like this, I'm sure, is brilliant for the conversations you might have. Just pick up a little bit of information here and there that can help you, whether it's a job hunting or understanding the industry a bit better. So on to action. The one thing about action is how do we do it when we're still uncertain? And I love this quote from Professor Kevin Dutton, who's a professor of psychology in Adelaide. And he says, it's about the ability to do what you need to do, even when you don't want to do it. And the only way we can do that is by splitting up emotions from behavior, our action. If we're able to say, I know it's going to be horrible or uncomfortable, I know I don't want to do it, I'll leave that there, and I will still take the action that's necessary. And this is, again, I spend a lot of time as a coach with senior leaders who avoid often difficult conversations or taking decisions or actions that they know are going to be uncomfortable because they find it hard to remove those emotions from the necessary actions. And that's a skill we can practice every single day, is just noticing our emotions and not ignoring them, but just being aware that they're there, and everybody will find things uncomfortable, and yet still being prepared to take our action. So that's what we did. We carried on skiing. This is Die 2, this disused station. It's 120 miles across the ice cap. That was like our reward. That was our major milestone. And I think to be resilient is how do we give ourselves rewards, even if it's a chocolate biscuit. It doesn't have to be anything exciting. Food always motivates me, by the way. You probably realize this by now on expedition. But having something that's going to reward you and just give you a sense of continuing on towards that purpose. Now, the next day, day 15, we left the Die 2 station and began skiing the first day with a tailwind, the wind behind us. So that gave us an opportunity to innovate. And we had kites in our sledge. Now, people have used kites. This is where it's a bit like kite surfing, if you've seen that at the beach. You launch your kite, clip it around your harness, and then it will drag you across the ice. Now, that, again, is brilliant in theory. We had no experience of doing this before. So what sometimes I find, again, that we can do in the business context is when we hear a new idea or an innovation, we kind of extrapolate, well, if I do that now, I'll have to do it forever. But we don't. Sometimes we can just do an experiment for a day, a week, a month. So we said to ourselves, let's give ourselves a day with the kites. We launched them, we carried on. Now, normally we skied at 4 kilometers an hour walking. We put the kites up. After 2 hours, we'd done 6 kilometers. It was slower than skiing. So we gave ourselves that day to experiment. It didn't work. And we said, okay, put them back in the sledge, carry on with what we know. So again, with innovation, stepping out our comfort zone, trying new things, perhaps always just a warning in your own mind. It doesn't have to be forever. Give yourself a date to check in, or your team to check in. How are we doing? Do we need to change it? Do we need to stop it? Do we need to go back to what we did before? We carried on again. Our sledges were now getting lighter. We were now at this highest point of the ice cap. And every single day we built, can you see on the left there, what looks like a snow wall here? It's a bit like a windbreak. Blocks of ice that you cut, build them up. Do you know if you go to the beach and you put up a windbreak to have your sandwiches behind it and not get the sand in your sandwiches? So it's like that. You put that up, build a wall at the end of the day before you pitch the tent. That will give you some protection from the wind. We had done this for 24 days. Had it ever got windy? No. So what is it that we do often when we have a process or a procedure or an activity, a habit, and we kind of think, what's the point? So on day 24, we were exhausted. We'd skied 40 kilometers that day. It was a really long day, tough. So who wanted to build a snow wall? Little effort went into it because we were all saying, well, it'll never happen because it's never happened for the last 24 days. So you could say we were getting overconfident, arrogant even. What happens when we get arrogant? Things go wrong, don't they? You kind of have to come back down to earth. Well, we built the snow wall half-heartedly, and the wind did get stronger that night. So much so that when we were in one tent, shouting to people in the next tent, you couldn't hear them at all. And eventually we made communication together, and we all decided to get into one tent because we thought safety in numbers, we need to be together in one tent. We then spent 36 hours together in that one tent, lying like sardines in our sleeping bags as the wind got stronger and stronger and stronger outside. And this is really where resilience comes in. This is a lovely quote from Elizabeth Edwards. Resilience is about accepting your new reality, even if it's less good than the one you had before. You can fight it, you can do nothing but scream about what you have lost, or you can accept it and try to put something together that's good. And that's really what we faced that night. We had to accept our new reality that we were in the middle of this really bad storm. How were we going to survive it rather than pretend it doesn't exist or we want to fight against it? This is what Terry looked like when he went outside to try and ensure our tent wasn't going to collapse. He came back in looking like that. It was deafening, the wind and the noise outside. It was about -40 Celsius. It was horrendous. And each one of us coped in different ways. Excuse me. Jana, the Norwegian, she had this is showing how old it is. She had a Sony Walkman. Do you remember what those things were? So she had a little bit of battery power, and she put on music, and she just went into her own space. And that's the way she managed the stress. The German Till, he was strategizing as to what to do and how much food we have left and how far we need to ski and so on. So he went into planning. Terry was thinking about his wife and 2 children, and would they see him again? And I was just thinking about food, and what I was looking forward to eating when we got out this horrendous situation. We all managed that difficult, tough situation and were resilient in different ways. So there is no right answer here. It's about developing our practices that work for us so we can be resilient in our circumstances. Eventually, after 36 hours, the wind died. We got out the tents and we began to see the mountains of East Greenland in the distance, and we knew that we had a bit of hope for the future. We carried on skiing, and 2 days later, we reached the other side of the ice cap. 28 days it took us in the end. And I think what did help us was having this explorer's mindset. Our curiosity to stick with things sometimes and not just rely on our habitual behavior, having that belief that we could do it together. It wasn't 4 individuals, we really were there as a team. Being willing to tolerate uncertainty and risk, take action, keep skiing every day, and then when things went wrong, how do we bounce back? Always with that bigger purpose in mind. We will make it to the end of the expedition. So I hope that my sort of sharing of our adventure this evening has helped you to think about it for yourself. And what I would like you to just consider, and we won't do this as an activity now, but when you get into the opportunity to have conversations afterwards, maybe just think about that action, that area that you recognize as your focus area, and maybe invite input from other people in conversation, or share with them what you intend to do to practice taking more of that action, being more curious or taking more risks, whatever it might be. So I'll invite you to do that. I'd like to leave you with this thought. You don't need to become a different kind of leader to thrive in uncertainty. You just need to become more deliberate about the leader that you already are. And remind yourself of that. So I hope that has given you some food for thought and some food for action. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, there's a QR code. Please, I'd love to hear from you and stay connected. If you want more inspiration, I do host a podcast. There's 150 episodes online now, access to inspiration. And I do have a book. I have brought some copies this evening as well, if you're interested. Explore a Life of Adventure. I'm going to stop talking, and I think there's time for questions. Thank you. Does anybody have a question? I think we've got a couple of minutes for questions.
I like to shift weights in the gym. I'm trying to imagine how heavy your backpack and your sled is in proportion to your body weight. So what are you pulling 30 days?
Yeah, about the weight of an average person. So something, what's that? 80, well, 60 kilos, something like that. But you've got your skis on with the skins, and not actual skin, but they've got friction on them. So when you push forward, you don't slide back. But it's just, you get used to it. Somebody else had a question here that, yes.
Have you felt anywhere in the journey that I want to give up? If yes, like if you felt that way, what made you motivate to go forward?
Yeah. So did I ever feel like giving up? Yes, is the answer. And what helped me to go forwards? Well, I think it's breaking it down into small steps. Like I said earlier, some days I had blisters the size of like 50-pence pieces on the back of my heels. So every step I took, I had this pain in the back of my feet. And I was physically and mentally exhausted. But there is nowhere to go. No one's going to come and pick me up and helicopter me out. No plane to land. No one's going to give me a ride on their sledge. I still have to do the work. So what's the minimum I need to be able to do the next step? And that would be all I would focus on. Okay, get through the next 5 minutes. Can I do that? Can I get through the next 5 minutes? And before you know where you are, you've done an hour. Well, if I can do an hour, I can do the next hour. So always, always, always breaking it down to the smallest step possible. And I see that in the workplace as well. Sometimes people have a big project and they avoid starting it because it's too difficult. Well, I say, just break it down to the first step. The first step is to make a plan maybe, or to speak to somebody about it, or to write the first 3 steps you're going to take. That's an action. And from there, do that and see what happens. The next day, do something else. I think what can stifle us is when something seems overwhelming. And if we can break it down into the smallest thing, it can be really helpful. That's what I did. Hi.
I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
One, I'm just curious, how long did the freezing temperature last? Because
Yes.
you said it was -40.
Yes.
I'm curious, and in terms of endurance, how long it took and what the rest of the journey was like. Second, you talked about 7 different risk types, and we were chatting, and it seemed like could put myself in a couple of boxes. So how do you really calibrate what risk type you are, or is it really a couple of boxes that you could fit in?
So great questions, thank you. First one is the -40 lasted about 2 days. And then there was extra wind chill, so it was really extremely cold then. It did warm up a little bit after that. So, you know, there were other days where we had those cold temperatures as well. So we just had to put more clothes on and keep moving. Again, because you can't escape it, you're there. The other question about the risk type, well, tonight I was giving you a very broad brush. Have a sense where you are. And if you have a sense, if you're more need to know or less need to know or more emotionless, it gives you a start point. The tool itself, and I'm not here to do a sales pitch, you know, but that people can get the risk type compass assessment. You get a little questionnaire and it gives you your actual risk type. So people that want to know more detail, they can do that. But you know, I always think rough and ready. Do you have a broad sense of where you're at? And often I've found you can get a clarity about where you are is where you find, as I say, people that are more frustrating to you, where their preference might be. Because if you saw on the diagram, wary and adventurous are opposite each other. So, or sorry, prudent and adventurous. So sometimes I find people who have got a preference of prudent actually frustrating, but then I'm prudent in order to be adventurous. So I will plan, I will organize, I will make sure everything's nailed down so that I can be adventurous when I go and do an activity. So it's we value the opposite, but we also find it frustrating sometimes. If that makes sense. I'm answering more than you asked, sorry. Any other questions? Are you all anxious to get on with your networking? Yes. Would I do something similar again? Yes, and I have done other polar expeditions afterwards. It's always about, I wouldn't go back to do the same sort of thing in the same way, so there's always got to be a kind of extra purpose or a new environment or something I'm going to learn, you know, interesting I'm going to learn about. So from learning and loving Greenland as a country, I went back a couple of years later out with the Inuit that go out and hunt on the sea ice, because I wanted to understand their life and their culture. And so I spent time with them traveling to appreciate, you know, living in that environment all the time. Yes.
Just to build on that, you learned how to do the case study and learn about what did you learn about yourself doing this?
Oh yeah, you always get good questions, don't I? Thank you. I learned quite a few things, I think. I learned in that example I gave you about owning my weaknesses. And actually it's not a limitation to have a weakness. In fact, it's a strength to own my weaknesses, because it also gives other people an opportunity to help me with that weakness, the thing I'm not so good at. So that was a really important learning. In the Arctic, it's one of these few places I've found where you really have to be authentic, because there is literally nothing to hide behind for doing anything. Let's say, if you think about the female thing squatting down on the ice and having a pee, just take that as an example. So it doesn't matter what your job title is or how much money you've got or what you've accomplished in your life. You are there just as a human being to survive. And that is a really important lesson I've taken ever since, is to say, do you know what? I'm good enough as I am. I've got things that are wrong with me, weaknesses. I've got strengths as well, but I know I can survive. And if I'm just show up as me, and you probably got a sense of that this evening, perhaps, actually, that gives other people permission to be themselves. And how easy is that when we can just all show up as ourselves? So I'm the one that can kind of kick that off. Does that answer your questions? Yes. Okay. Right, I'm sure I've done far more talking than you really wanted to listen to. So I will definitely stop now, and I'll hand back to whoever's from your organisation. Thank you.
I've been volunteered, so thanks so much, Sue. It's been amazing. I think we've all got so much to learn from you, and you know, all these lessons that you acquired throughout your vast experience. But yeah, thank you everyone who turned up today. I think it's so lovely to see a full room of of people, and I know a lot of you are here for the first time attending one of our events. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope we'll see you again soon. And yeah, I don't know if we have back to our slides, links to future events and things like that.
Yeah, just a minute.
We're working with the tech. But yeah, we normally do about one in-person event per month, and then we might have online events here and there, usually lunchtime events for the online ones. There we go. There's the agenda of the next few that are coming up. So yeah, we've got in April is the next in-person one around building teams that last and fertility and all of that good stuff. And then 28th of April is our next online event, which is built around belonging. So yeah, feel free to scan the code over there. That will take you to our Luma page where you can sign up to these events. And yeah, if you haven't joined us yet, please do join the community. We've got a Slack community as well where you can engage with others.
Just tell me to join us.
There we go. Thank you. It's almost like it was planned. So yeah, and these are the themes for our events for this year. So we're aiming to provide events around these themes. Not necessarily any specific timeframes for any of these, but all of our events will be related to one of these themes this year. So yeah, thank you again for coming. And enjoy some drinks and stuff.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'll take my tech back before we forget.
Operator, I just realized that